no one has ever shown that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. It's never been shown scientifically. And I have asked and asked and asked for this information. I've been searching the literature. I cannot find it. So the whole fundamentals are wrong. And if we look back in time, and as someone who does deal with history and archaeology and geology, we've never had a correlation between temperature and carbon dioxide. There's never been climate change driven by carbon dioxide. All we see is the exact opposite. And the opposite is we've had 6 great ice ages, yes, each of which kicked off when we had more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than now. So it's obvious carbon dioxide does not and cannot drive global warming. And so the past tells us what's happening in the present and what will happen in the future. And then I look at models. I mean, as soon as I hear the word model, be it on COVID, be it on economics, be it on climate, I just flick channels or I want to go outside and vomit. Models are an interesting attempt to try to understand nature. But we know so little about how the planet works that that's all they are. We cannot predict the future from the models. And I go into, in this book, I have a chapter on predicting the future and how over the last 2,000 years, we've had thousands of people predicting the end of the world. And these predicting frying and dying or freezing or dying in an environmental toxic soup. Now, if just one of these people was correct, then we wouldn't be here. So
when I was a kid, it was all the hang on, what's going on here? When I was a kid, it was all the hole in the ozone layer, and we were getting terrified of hairspray, and I used to be very scared of my nana using her hairspray, thinking that we're all going to die because the hole in the ozone layer was going to get so big and fry us. That didn't happen.
And what we didn't hear was that a lot of the ozone derived from chemical reactions between sunlight and salt on ice. So there was a lot we didn't hear about that, and the same with climate. We don't hear anything about the past. There's no recognition that history has something to say or geology has something to say. So the predictions are laughable, and a lot of these predictions get attention by predicting catastrophes like sea level rises or massive hurricanes. Now, Australia's got some really good examples of sea level rise. If we go around the east coast of Australia, we see a nick just under the base of cliffs, and that's where sea level was about 2 meters higher only 4,000 years ago.
Yes.
What's happened is that sea level has dropped since a global warm period about 4,000 to 6,000 years ago. We see it all the way around Australia. We've got jetties that have been there for a long while. I think Busselton in Western Australia has been there for 157 years. We've got Fort Denison in Sydney Harbour, which was built to stop a Russian naval invasion during the Crimean War. Well, it was finished after the Crimean War, but it did a good job. The Russian Navy's never invaded us. But the tidal measuring station there shows that there is a very, very, very slight sea level rise, but it could be due to something else. It could be due to Fort Denison sinking. And we see that at the Port Adelaide sea level measuring station. Where at Port Adelaide, we've got a pier where we've had sea level measuring and the pier's been sinking. So obviously sea level's been going up. So when we measure sea level as a catastrophe, when we're all going to drown, we have to remember measuring stations move, land goes up and down, and sea level goes up and down. Now, a great example of that are the old beaches that are mined in New South Wales at Kerry, which is only 500 kilometres inland from where the beaches retreated to, and that was in Victoria. And we've got about 200 beaches all the way up to the Murray-Darling Basin. So that is due to either a sea level fall or a land level rise, and probably in the Murray-Darling Basin, probably both. Yes. So I look at these and then I start to look at the implications of it. Okay, we're all going to die. We've got to stop emitting this food of life, which makes plants grow and makes crops grow, and we can feed more people. And I look at renewables, these wonderful bird and bat chomping machines that at the end of their life, which is really short, we don't know what to do with the waste. And so we just dump it. And this waste is dumped. There are highly toxic compounds in turbine blades The same in solar panels. These are leaching into the water table. Now, if you were a factory or an agricultural enterprise or a mine and dump toxins like that, you will be strung up, but not so for our wonderful renewable industry who apparently hold the high moral ground. And we've had this grand betrayal that renewables were going to lower our electricity costs. They haven't. And just look at the way Germany or the UK or Texas or California have almost gone into complete blackout mode for long periods of time because the renewables didn't work. Now, it's funny that, you know, I can see the sun starting to set here in Adelaide, and it seems to happen every day. So that means you only get about 8 hours of solar power. Clearly, you have backup. And we do have the backup, but it's never acknowledged.
Yes.
So I look at this grand betrayal of the renewables, and then I start to look at what we do with renewables, which are meant to give us excess energy. And this is meant to go into electric cars, and we store the extra renewable energy in batteries. Now, these electric cars are fabulous. We've first had a hydrogen oxygen car in 1807. People first tried electric cars in 1839. We don't have them because they're too expensive. And
Scott Morrison is really pushing them today. Like, that's his thing today. He's pushing the electric vehicles.
Well, I spend a lot of my time in Broken Hill. I'd like to see Scott Morrison come up and visit from his electorate. I can drive from Sydney to Broken Hill. It's only 1,300 kilometres. I can do it in a day. He would take 2 weeks and he would have no charging stations on the way. Plus, he'd have a really good chance of the electric car catching a light. And if it did catch a light, then these fires you can't put out. And these fires produce hydrofluoric acid. Now, hydrofluoric acid is so potent, it will dissolve rocks, it will dissolve glass, it will dissolve bricks. Electric vehicles are fabulous if they're subsidised. So now we have subsidised renewables, and they're supporting subsidised cars. And the next big con coming along is subsidised mega batteries, and we've already seen that big fire at Geelong. And the next big con coming along, just to take another slice of salami out of your pocket, is the massive push towards hydrogen. Now, to make hydrogen, you need to put more energy in than you get out, than the hydrogen can produce. This is the second law of thermodynamics. Kids should know this from school. So we're using subsidised renewables to make an energy deficient process to give us hydrogen. That's not the worry. I mean, this is just a massive waste of taxpayers' money and the public pay for it. But the real problem with hydrogen is it's dangerous. Look at the Challenger explosion of January 1986.
I remember it very well.
And hydrogen is one of the most explosive substances around. And this is why I got interested in chemistry as a kid. We made hydrogen. We made these hydrogen balloons and blew them up. And you can take out windows, you know, from 20 metres away very easily with one of these things. Now, if we're going to pipe hydrogen or have hydrogen cars or hydrogen-bearing vehicles such as trucks carrying it from one place to the other, God help us, because if there was an explosion, it is bigger than any petrochemical explosion, but it's also a wonderful opportunity for terrorists. A truck full of chlorine is great. A truck full of ammonium nitrate is great. A truck full of aviation fuel is great. But if you've got a truck full of hydrogen, you can take out half a city with this. It is incredibly explosive, and it leaks through solid metal. And as it leaks through solid metal, it weakens it, and that metal can shear and break very easily. So I then asked the final question, well, what in the hell happened? We once had cheap, reliable electricity. That came from coal, it came from gas, and some from hydro. We've never shown that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming, but because we've dumbed down our education system over 40 years, we are now able to pull off the biggest scientific con that there ever has been in the history of the planet. And coupled onto that, we've now got the biggest financial con that we've ever had in the history of the planet. So my advice to any viewers is glue up your wallet, hang on to your money, because they're after you. They're coming for you in your electricity bill, in your gas bill. You will have a fuel levy, you will have a levy on your rates. Hang on to everything, because this is the greatest transfer of money from the middle and lower classes to the elites, and it will end up in going the opposite direction to what coal did. Coal gave us a middle class. We are going to lose a middle class because of this. And it's out of our hands, and Glasgow was a talk fest.
Correct. Well, even the amount of
stealing your money.
That's right. The amount of private jets and cars, like even the president of the USA had 50-something cars in his entourage. Everyone was flying in on private jets. I lost count of how many private jets all flew in for those people in Glasgow to preach to us regular plebs about what we should be doing with having one car and a light on in our lounge room. It was really quite appalling. And Prince Charles, our royal family, getting involved as well. They're supposed to be apolitical. And then, of course, we had a screeching from Greta as well. I'm sure you watched the whole Glasgow thing with a lot of fixed interest, Ian.
Of course I did. I had nothing else to do with my time.
There was a lot of amazing dancing and poetry. And
that's going to change the climate.
Yes, yes.
Poetry, it's scientifically proven that poetry stops global warming.
Yes. Lots of light shows and music and stuff like that. I'm sure they all felt very good about themselves for attending.
Well, they do, but they're hypocrites. And they're totally ignorant. And you can ask them one simple scientific question. You say, well, you're telling me about carbon pollution. I mean, really, we're talking about carbon dioxide. Oh, yes. Well, just to make sure we're talking about the same thing, what is the molecular weight of carbon dioxide? And they give you a blank look. And you know that you are not dealing with anything to do with what's written on your T-shirt. It's got nothing to do with...
That's right. Yes.
Politics. It's a method of skinning you alive. And all the people that we know well are in there to make money, and it's going to impoverish us. God help the next generation who do not have the education and the critical and the analytical skills and will not have the money to fight it.
Correct.
And we need a massive force to counteract the Greens, and this is where the Lib Dems come in.
Yes.
We don't have any other party taking the Greens on front on. And the purpose of this book was to do what Conservatives don't do, and that is get into the gutter and have a fight, which I want to do. And all I want to do is to end up covered in blood, but face up. That's all.
Professor Plimer, there's some lovely comments here. I'm just going to read out a couple. Well, Russell does say, I agree entirely with Ian Plimer's argument and I've already ordered 3 books. So that is great. Benjamin says, Professor Plimer is a bloody legend. I've been following, dare I say, hero worshipping Professor Plimer since he was debunking Bible myths. Here we go. One from Sasho saying ScoMo is trying to chase the vote of people who will never vote for him at the expense of those who would support him. And that is certainly true. Ben also says, if I buy the hard copy, can I get it signed? Please, 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 please.
Well,
Ben, we will organise that. We will organise that.
Right, one thing about the copies. Now, the publisher made a mistake with the price. So everyone that orders now and can get their order done in the next fortnight, every one of those will be signed by me. I'll go to Brisbane and sit down. There's about 3 days of signing. And if you want it inscribed to someone, I will inscribe it. But the price will go up because he made a mistake. And quite often when I've had at book signings, a lady will bounce up to me and ask for something interesting to be written there. So I'll write, Dear Mary, thank you for that wonderful weekend in Paris, and sign it and then close it.
See, this is why I described you as a rabble-rouser, Ian. You are. Fraser.
The ladies would go out and open it and either screech with laughter or come back and say, well, what happens if my husband sees this? I said, well, fine.
I love that. Fraser says, thanks for all you do, Ian. Love hearing your wisdom. David says,